Welcome to the Inner Huddle, the podcast for parents and coaches to help children fulfill their potential both on and off the pitch.
Welcome along to the Inner Huddle, Series 3, Episode 4. I'm Pez, he's Geoff, and together we are Pez and Geoff. And together, Geoff, this is the ultimate podcast for football parents and coaches. That's new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you like that? Just want to throw that in randomly.
Nice intro, yeah.
Nice intro. Yeah. Well, you think I'd have a better one now, wouldn't you, after however many episodes and 30,000+ downloads? But anyway.
No, and this is exactly as I thought it would be.
Yeah, probably exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
It's its natural charm. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Wessex had a great day Sunday. Been looking forward to catching up with you and throwing that question straight in there.
So, 4 games ago, we were bottom of the league. 4 games later, after Sunday, 4 in a row wins against Hartbury, who had a really strong squad. We are now 5th, 1 point off the top 4 playoffs for Champions League, which is some turnaround.
Yeah. Is there a futsal equivalent of It's a Funny Old Game?
Yeah, Wessex Futsal Club. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the living, breathing, funny old game.
But I think you probably had an even more exciting weekend.
Yeah, I had a great weekend. I went over to Holland to Heerenveen FC or SC Heerenveen to watch one of our former players, Charlie Webster. I was going to say play, but he didn't actually come on, which was a shame. But his team were playing Feyenoord. He's on loan from Chelsea. But it was a great experience. The club's fantastic, much better than I thought. And I got really looked after by the club. Charlie's dad, went out for dinner and stuff. Yeah, so really good weekend. Unfortunately, they lost 3-2. Very late goal. The defender I still don't even know what he did. Came on as sub and he was the last man and he got caught in about 3 different minds, went to play it, hit his standing foot, and then it just was in front of the keeper and the guy ran in and finished it off. So everyone was a bit down. Well, I say everyone was a bit down, but the whole club's not like that. They were singing and dancing and stuff still in the bars and stuff in the stadium, and it was a very crazy place. I believe it is one of, if not the only place or football club where the stadium holds more capacity than the place itself.
Wow.
So I don't know where they all come in from. It's bizarre because I didn't see too many people walking to the ground. There wasn't a massive car park or loads of buses everywhere. But the ground was full. I don't know if they live in underground tunnels or something, but it was a bit bizarre, but really, really good. And I really loved it.
I think we can get 150 people in the sports hall in Andover. Is that more than people live in Andover, or is it?
Do you know what?
Pretty close.
All joking aside, Heerenveen itself is smaller than Andover and it's smaller than Salisbury.
Wow.
So to have a team...
That's less than 40,000 people, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think 45 is Salisbury and I think it's 30-something is Heerenveen. It's just incredible to think, if Salisbury or Andover had a stadium like that in the Premier League, the top flight, just can't get my head around it. And I think it's still classed as a village in Holland. It's, when you get what a village or a town has to have to be called that, it hasn't quite got it, and it's still classed as a village. So it was, yeah.
When I said you had a more exciting weekend, I meant all the trains that you managed to catch, because you love a train, don't you?
I don't mind a train, mate. Don't mind a train. I don't mind a book. So I finished my book on the train. Yeah, I think it was, including undergrounds, about 7 trains yesterday. 7 trains, 1 book, 10 hours, 1 tired coach. I'm still here today, Geoff.
Is that going to be the title of your next book?
I think, yeah, it should be. What, 7 trains, 1 book?
Yeah.
It's not bad now. I'll write that down. Oh, I almost dropped my pen. Right, anyway, before everyone gets too bored, we're almost 5 minutes in. Should we crack on with what we're here to do?
I would carry on waffling all day if you like,
Yeah,
Pez,
probably.
but yeah.
We're probably better at that. But we have 4 questions in front of us, and we're going to stick with the format of 1 question from the general public, and then 1 random chapter from the book, and then 1 question, 1 chapter,
Okay.
and keep like that. For various reasons. 1, it's had some good feedback, and it's a nice and simple format. And 2, we've had hundreds and hundreds of questions now over however many episodes we've done, and we don't want to keep covering over exactly the same stuff. Happy?
Yeah, can I read question number 1? Because question 2 is a long one.
Yes, Jeffrey, of course you can.
Oh, thanks, Pez. Question number 1. I've heard you both talk about the need for players to scan whilst playing. Do you have any advice for helping my son scan more, or know of any drills that might help?
Oh, you're looking at me.
Yeah.
I suppose because you asked the question. Yes, I'm sure we can help with this one, Geoff. I'm going to throw it straight back on you. In a group setting, how do you encourage players to scan?
I think the first time I ever really thought about introducing it into coaching was actually not around passing and receiving and moving away from the ball and off the ball, which is where you think about where you're scanning most.
Mm-hmm.
If you're watching clips of Frank Lampard when he played, or a Xavi or Iniesta.
So can I just throw it out for people that are watching and listening that might go, what actually is scanning? I've never come across that before. Perhaps we should start right at the back.
Again, I'll link it back to another analogy then. When you learn to drive, your driving instructor always tells you to check your mirrors when you come onto a new road. And you could call it checking your mirrors, couldn't you? So anytime you're about to change direction, or after you've changed direction, it's a look over your shoulder to see what's around you in space, and to assess time and where the sidelines are, where the opposition are, where the goal is maybe, where the defenders are.
Or buzz term, where the affordances for action are.
Oh, I like that.
Mm.
So that would be how I would explain what scanning is.
Yeah, so awareness of everything that's going on around you, including opportunities to make things happen or keep possession, or whatever's on, but you won't know what's on unless you're collecting the information. So that's what scanning is. Yeah, so basically looking over your shoulders and being aware. Fortunately, what I've found through my years is just shouting out scanning is probably not enough, because they literally, not great for a podcast, but just do this.
Yeah.
Little head swivel and not actually taking in any information whatsoever. They're just going through emotion to please the coach.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that on a podcast before, about children that do it for the coaches, not for themselves, isn't it? They're doing it to show that they're moving their head around, but they're not actually scanning. They're not scanning the area at all, are they? They're just
swiveling their head.
Yeah, and I imagine it just is a blur at the speed that they do it at sometimes. So they're not taking in any information. They're probably only hindering their performance rather than helping their performance when they're doing that for show. So yes, going back to the first time I think I actually used the word scan in a coaching session, was doing individual ball mastery, and there's a move that we do. There's a couple of moves that we do where you go out with your little toe or outside of your foot. You stop it with the sole, or sole flick it back towards your other foot, and then you step past it as a turn or a change of direction, and then you repeat it on the other side. So out stop lunge, or out sole in, out sole in, out sole in, constantly repeated, right foot, left foot. And I just found myself when I was doing it, it was a really good trigger when I put my foot on the ball and I knew I was about to change direction, to check over the opposite shoulder, because I knew I was about to change in that direction. So hopefully that's come across on a podcast well enough without showing video. But and then I liken it to action men that would have karate chop or eagle eyes, where you'd flick a switch on a little lever on their back, and then their eagle eyes would go right to left.
Yeah, I remember I had them.
And then if I put my foot on the ball, it felt like the action of flicking that lever, and my head would then scan for my change of direction. And that, I think, having an action to trigger scanning rather than just saying scan when you change direction really helped me as a player. So I tried to introduce that into my coaching. But more traditionally, you would coach scanning more around the ball and away from the ball in the game, I think, because you're looking for your next action before you receive the ball.
Yeah, what am I going to do next if I get the ball now?
And we've had some quite cool gadgets and things that we've used in the past for scanning, haven't we? We had Soccer Matrix. We both had one, which was an 8-panelled.
They've got a new one out now, by the way.
Yeah, it's got more panels. Yeah.
Where upgraded version.
It would have a number on it, and it would either call out that number, so you'd have to scan and look for that number before you play a pass. And the better quality of pass and the more speed you would complete that sequence of numbers, the higher score you'd get. So I really like that because it would involve passing, receiving, and scanning. And the more you combine those three things.
The ones now with the lights instead of the numbers
are
better because the kids were learning off by heart where the numbers were.
Yes.
When it got shouted out. So it was great to start with, but the more they used it, they knew where 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10 were.
And I think the new one doesn't just have numbers, it has numbers, shapes and colours.
Okay.
So I haven't seen it in action, but I imagine it might go 1, then it might go green, then it might go triangle. So it would be much harder to remember a sequence of all of that than it would be just where's 2, where's 4.
What were they called? They changed. They used to be Soccer Matrix, and then they were.
I think they were just always called Quick Feet Soccer Matrix.
Quick Feet Trainer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was it. And there's Blaze Pods,
Yeah.
and possibly equivalents out there now, where you can kind of set up your own with different lights that randomly go off behind. If you're a parent and you want to help them at home, you can get your child to do some ball mastery work or some ball work in the garden, or even, dare I say it, in the sitting room with a sponge ball, and you can stand behind them and encourage them to scan, and you can have playing cards behind them so they have to shout out what they've actually seen, or it could just be colours. Chap the other day that I was speaking to about this from New Zealand, he's got I think a random colour generator on an iPad. So they have that behind, and of course that's great because you can have an iPad stand, can't you, behind, so it can be random.
That's really good. I think if it's something that's always fixed in the same place, you're only practicing scanning in one direction there. So if the child could be moving around and somebody's moving around with that iPad behind them,
yes,
that way they're actually constantly checking the right spaces.
As a start, I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
And then progress it to, say you've looked behind and it's a red, then you find where the red cone is out there, and then you dribble around the red cone. So then you're scanning, seeing, taking in that information, then acting on that information.
Yeah,
it is a good progression. But I think maybe, and I've not done it, but something like random blaze pods around, and you're dribbling, and when one of those lights up, that's where you head. And it might be in front of you, might be side of you, might be behind you, would be more, because you still got to scan because you don't know which one's gonna light up. So it might be something to have a bit of fun with, I think.
Yeah, my brain's now starting to go crazy with different ideas you could do with it. Yeah. But I've also, even in the very first FA level 1 coaching course, I'm pretty sure there was a traffic lights game where a coach would walk around with a green cone, a yellow amber cone, and a red cone. And as basic as that is, rather than shouting out stop or red, if you just hold that cone up, then players have to get their head up, whilst they might be working on an individual skill to beat a player move or whatever it might be.
We've also used head up bands instead of bibs to encourage players to keep their heads up. Yeah, which is caught on a little bit, not as much as I think it should, because it's really, really simple. So rather than a bib, you have a headband, and they're all in the same colour bib. Yeah, but the headbands distinguish what team you're on, and that helps them to get their heads up. Obviously, encouragement and a reminder to keep scanning. players should really scan constantly, especially when calling for the ball, because otherwise they're calling for it, getting it, and then they're getting the head up and looking for affordances to action, and the momentum's gone. You're slowing the game down. So if you want to play at a high level, you really do need to be able to scan to take in the information to then act on. And having a good first touch, obviously, as well, to go towards whatever action you've seen from scanning. But I also mentioned to the chap from New Zealand, as maybe some sort of reminder, have a scanning wristband. So you have any old sweatband, whatever it is, which if you look at it, scan. So when you become aware that you're wearing a wristband, you've got to scan and look over your shoulders, just to try and get into the habit maybe of doing it. But they need to really be doing it in training, when they're practicing, when they're playing with their mates. Just got to try and get into that habit of scan, call for the ball, scan while it's on its way, scanning while you're on the ball, scanning as much as you can, Geoff.
Yeah. Do you think you can overdo it? Do you think there's...
I know players that seem to overdo it. You think, okay, I know you're sort of trying to make a point now rather than... But if you watch your next Premier League game or Champions League game, just pick a player out for a while and notice how many times they scan. You almost goes under the radar. But I do it occasionally. It's like the big thing of taking the ball on the back foot. When you look for that, you see it all the time. When you look for players who take the ball with their soul with their first touch, you start seeing it all the time.
Do you think, I'm just trying to think of Messi, do you think he does it as much as Frank Lampard did?
Possibly not.
I reckon he might do, but it might be a bit more peripheral vision and a bit more doesn't want to show people that he's thinking about where I might be taking the ball next.
I think centre midfielders of a type, Lampard, Cesc Fabregas, people like that, Pirlo maybe, even your Declan Rices and things of more modern players in that central part where they're getting the ball off the keeper from wide, and their job is to keep the ball and don't lose possession there.
Or turn if they can and play face forward and play forward if they can.
Exactly. And because so many teams are playing out from the back now, you can't do it if you don't scan. You can't get out of those tight spaces unless you're technically good and you scan, so you know where the options are when you've got two players breathing down your neck.
And then it might be very position specific, mightn't it? I don't know how much you'd need to do it if you're maybe not a modern one, but an old school fullback, where you might be receiving it on the half turn, but you can probably see the whole pitch in front of you and where it's coming from, because you're out on the sideline anyway. It's
the same philosophy, but maybe not scan, that's head up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just, you can see everything, so you don't need to be checking your shoulders and checking your mirrors, do you? Because it's all in front of you. The only thing that's behind you is a sideline.
So then it would be more of a shout of head up, or the habit of getting into head up. But it is very important. If you do notice that your child's not doing it, then a little bit of encouragement. But as with everything, you don't need to get too serious and bog them down with too much. But I think head up for a start is a really good one to shout out. I used to shout out all the time. Head up, because you've seen something, but you don't want to shout out what you've seen because you don't want to control the game. So head up because you want them to see maybe what you've seen or something different, another alternative of their own. So head up, scan, I think are good things for coaches to shout. I'm not sure about parents keep shouting that out all the time. Head up, scan. It'd be carnage with everyone shouting it out.
Yeah, and we've discussed before, that's often a replacement for pass to my son, isn't it? That's basically head up, because they know that you don't mind them shouting that out. You've written it in your book, so they must be fine for me to shout that out.
Yeah. But very good question.
Yeah.
Nice technical one there. So thanks for that.
Right. Shall we go for...
We'll go for random number generator. And I have got a list of chapters we previously had, which is getting quite large now. I need to put them into order. So he's put it up to the camera.
1 to 150.
That's correct.
3, 2, 1, randomise. Oh, good year. 66.
66. No, we haven't had it, Jeffrey. So let's scoot to 66. Let's Welcome to Jack and Ori. Do you even remember Jack and Ori?
Jack and Ori stories?
Yeah.
No.
No, I didn't think you would. Oh, wow. They're all deep, really. Some of them aren't. But right, so excuse the rustling of pages and paper. Chapter 66 of my new book, Did You Win, Did You Score? How to Help Your Child Succeed at Football and Life, which is available where, Jeffrey?
In all good bookstores.
Not really, just Amazon. And the Great British Bookshop.
One day, all good bookstores.
One day.
And some rubbish ones too.
I'm sure. Yes, chapter 66, playing for more than one team, which I see quite a lot of questions about on social media, on different sort of grassroots pages. And the opening quote is, sometimes less is more.
Can I just stop you there? Because chapter 66, and you've got playing for more, Bobby Moore, than one team. And then your opening quote is, sometimes less is more, Bobby Moore. Is that an accident, or did you do that on purpose?
Well, they're spelt differently, obviously, because Moore's double O. But no, I'm a genius.
It's not a happy little accident.
No, it wasn't done on purpose, mate.
Well played, Pez.
The opening quote is by William Shakespeare. It's got absolutely nothing to do with England 1966.
No.
But yes, I see what you've done there.
See what you've done there. Yeah.
Right, I will read out the first couple of paragraphs. This one's actually almost 3 pages long because it's an important one. Hopefully we'll get a gist from the first couple. I'll be completely honest with this one and say that I don't particularly like children playing for more than one club. My advice has always been to choose one good one and go all in with that one. I often find that, in general, the children who play for 2 clubs have the pushiest parents and are doing most of the things that I write about in this book, which will hinder their child from fulfilling their potential. Playing for 2 teams means more car travel time to matches and training. I believe the required ratio of training to playing matches should be 2 or 3 training sessions for every match to facilitate development. Playing 2 matches every weekend would require 4 to 6 training sessions, which is not feasible for most children. Conflicting messages from managers and clubs with different ethos and values can also confuse the child. In my opinion, the time would be much better spent finding a different activity or sport altogether instead of playing football for 2 football teams. Or, if the child is only interested in football, then use the time for extra work at home on mastering the fundamental basics, improving physical literacy, or simply playing with their friends. So that's the opening 2 paragraphs. Got some key takeaways here. Also, if parents have got into some of the bad habits mentioned in this book, playing for 2 teams doubles the negatives. Some of those hours spent in the car could actually be spent getting better at football, which is an interesting point. And the closing quote is, when you fear missing out, you're missing the moment. And that's by Mr. Unknown. So thanks for that. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. It actually, as quite a few of them are, a very important one, especially nowadays, because so many parents think that their child has to be playing in a Saturday league or a Sunday league. And it normally follows this pattern, Geoff. Kid wants to play football, you put them in the local Sunday team, they play with their friends, they really enjoy it. And then you start hearing about Saturday teams where there might be a bit more glory, maybe a fancier name, and a couple of the players from that team go and try it out, and they're in there, and then at training they're all saying, oh yeah, we did this, we played against this semi-pro outfit at the weekend, and it becomes almost a fear of missing out. So, oh yeah, the scouts were at the last game and all this kind of stuff, and you think, well, God, if we're not in it, are we letting our child down by not being in it? Oh, but it's so much money, and he really likes being in the team that he's in at the moment because all his friends are there, and you know, we like the end of season barbecue and whatever it might be, and all these things rat around in parents' brains. But a lot of the time they think, well, we'll find the money, and before you know it, Tiny Tim or Tiny Tina is playing for a Saturday team and a Sunday team and training 2, 3, 4 times a week. With the things that I've just said, conflicting messages, different reasons for being there. One team might be all about winning, one might be about development. and then it can become confusing for the child. Not to mention how expensive it is, especially if you've got to buy your own training kit. Some of them clubs you do, especially on a Saturday, plus your fees and everything else that goes with it. It's a bit of a minefield. I say that quite a lot, don't I?
Yeah, this is a really powerful chapter, Pez, and a really important one. And I think that because it goes against the status quo and everything you're told, or I was always told growing up, possibly, and what you hear maybe some more experienced coaches along your journey saying, go and play as much as you can for as many different people as you can, and get as many different experiences as you can, and different richness of experiences, and you'll learn things through this. And this is actually going against that and saying the complete opposite. And I think the fact that there's so much of that, I'm going to call it jargon out there, that people can just throw out as a cliche, and when you hear something over and over and you think it's coming from people that know what they're talking about, it just becomes like it's a fact, and everyone will take that as oh, if so and so said that and they know what they're talking about because they've been involved in football their whole life, then I must trust that that's obviously the right thing to do. But
there's a definite narrative now that if you're not playing Saturday football, you're not playing at any level.
You're missing out.
Missing out.
But you're right in that, in talking about the money, because I think parents have got to look at it really carefully and think about who it's really benefiting. It's being dressed up to benefit the children, but have a look at the history of the past however many years. Talk to other parents that have maybe done it and tried it, and see where they are at now 3 or 4 years down the line. Are they still playing football in that team? Have they got a senior team that they've progressed into, or have they progressed into a senior team at a level that their trajectory should have been on anyway? Have they gone further than they might have done? You can't measure it, can you? But I think if you do your homework, you might actually find out that these are all just things that have been put out into the universe to convince people to do something that actually isn't the positive that it's being dressed up to be. It's doing more harm than good from what we're seeing.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of Saturday leagues and clubs now where they're under pressure to win, because if they're not winning and they're in a so-called elite league, players are going to leave, and they know it. And because there are a lot more teams around there now in these elite leagues, pushy parents, and not even pushy parents, any parent can just take their kid out at any point. So if you're the manager of a team and you've lost 4 or 5 on the bounce, you're under pressure. And unfortunately, shockingly even, youth football's become a results business, which it never should, because you can't develop players in that environment. And okay, some of these teams might argue, yeah, but our training's really, really good and we look after our players. But the training tends to be about what did we do in the last game, what can we improve on, and what we're going to do in the next game. And that's too small a window, is that the right word? Too narrow a field for development. They're not going to work on a player's weak foot or that type of thing when they've got a game to win at the weekend. So it'll be, how are we going to organise this group, the players we got? And if that isn't working over a period of time, it's right. The only way we can improve this is to recruit. And I see it all the time on social media, earlier and earlier as well in the season. I'm having a lot now. We are looking for players to join our wonderful setup next season. We play in this league, that league. We're a very good team. Nice little, poster type artwork. And everyone's kind of competing for the local best players. And development's gone out of the window. And I think it is a problem. I've mentioned the time travelling in the car. I mean, I think I've put the actual stats here, but shall I read the last chapter here, actually?
Yeah.
I hope I've got my maths right. If a player plays 25 games for each team a season with a very conservative 30-minute average travelling time per game, 50 minutes there and 15 minutes back, that would be 25 hours spent travelling a year. On average, each player gets less than 3 minutes on the ball per game. If we generously say that your child gets 3 minutes, then that's 2.5 hours a season actually in contact with the ball. So 25 hours for only 2.5 hours with the ball. In terms of development, this isn't enough contact time with the ball. And some of those hours spent in the car could actually be spent getting better at football. If your child plays for 2 teams, the training sessions need to be of a very high quality with a lot of time spent on fundamental technical skills to fulfil their potential. So it's a matter of maths. You're going to travel, do a load of travelling, you're going to be in the car, and then your actual contact time with the ball is minimal.
And this is wherein lies the problem. So when you hear a parent say, oh, this new team that started up, their training's really good, they're really organised, and it might wow somebody that doesn't know that actually is the training really high quality, or is a ball and a wall on the street for half an hour higher quality because you're getting more touches of the ball, more repetitions. And if you want to go back to the scanning question, one way to be able to scan more is to be more comfortable on the ball and know that you can deal with the ball at different speeds off of a wall. Or so the more you
concentrate on information and gathering information,
the more you practice
technique
purposefully, and that's the key, isn't it? Purposeful practice, the easier everything else becomes. So if you are spending all that time in the car and having that few touches, and then spending all that time in the car on the way back afterwards, and you could have done 20 minutes round at the garages or wherever with your mates,
playing with your mates, trying things, expressing yourself, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes.
What's your metric? What's your measurement for what is good training? Because you turned up and they're all in the same bibs and they've got a load of balls and shiny cones. What makes it good training?
Don't mistake what looks like good training for good football development, because good football development can sometimes look chaotic and random, because that's where the mistakes are made and that's where players have got to adapt quickly and progress. Whereas I think people say the training's really good is when it's well organised and the coaches are able to organise the players, maybe more patterns of play, with a view to winning their next game, combining players together to win a game, which is very different to football development. It is like, and it's in the book somewhere, it's a bit like a child learning to play an instrument but only learning to play 10 songs and then getting really good at those 10 songs and going to compete against other people that know 10 songs. I don't know, but if you want them to get actually really, really good at the instrument, you have to let them play with it and practice with it and experiment and try different things of their own and mess up and sound horrendous for a while until they get really, really comfortable with whatever instrument it is that they're learning, guitar or something. And then once you get through that messy middle bit, there's not a lot they can't do and can't adapt to, and they can play almost any song. Some people are really good on the guitar, Geoff. You can say, can you play this song? They go, oh yeah, I think it might go a bit like this, and it's just, and then people go, oh, they're naturally talented. They go, no, well, they're not, because they've spent hours and hours and hours learning their instrument. And then your kid is going to play the equivalent of cover songs in a band one day, rather than maybe fulfilling their potential, because all they've done is done a set plan of what an adult wants them to do at the weekend. I don't know if I explained that very well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just going back to playing the William Shakespeare quote, which was sometimes less is more. It's actually sometimes less is physically more practice, is what you're getting at really in the book, isn't it? You're getting those affordances for action if you're there with a couple of mates and you're doing it down the park, and you're not getting it if you're in a team that's already 11 aside or
I think the problem is there aren't that many opportunities for people to play with their mates anymore, because they're all bloody playing Saturday and Sunday football and training 3 or 4 times a week. And then if they're still into the football after all that, they just play FIFA to get their kick with their mates online. It is a different world now. I'm going to throw it in there, Geoff. Go and play futsal. So you get more affordances for action, more contact time with the ball. Everything in football and in life when it comes to learning new things, maximising your time. And if you're playing Saturdays and Sundays, then their training sessions have to be real top quality with a lot of contact time on the ball, because they're not getting a lot of contact time in their matches and they're overloaded with matches to train in. So futsal, maybe play for one football team and go and get some futsal, or dare I say it, come to a technical training session like what I do. Not one-to-ones, because that's different. They've got their own problems, which we talked about a couple of podcasts ago, but a session that's geared just around your child's individual improvement, and not an adult going, how's this kid going to combine with other kids to help me win a game of football? Which, let's have it right, which is what a lot of it's about. Especially Saturdays, but I presume there's some good Saturday ones and some bad Sunday ones, Geoff. It just seems to be the way it's gone over the last few years, is Sundays for your friends and your village team, Saturdays for let's go win things and get noticed by some scouts. And it just doesn't work like that. So if you're feeling under pressure to put your kid in 2 teams, don't think that you're missing out and that you have to.
Right, shall we move on to our
I think we should, yeah.
next question before I get too depressed again?
Yeah, try and lift it a bit. But it is an important one, that one, so I'm glad we spent a bit of time on it.
66.
Right. Oh, do I need to write down 66? Yes, I do. 66. And then, gee whiz, question number 2. My 9-year-old lad has been told his grassroots team aren't going to re-sign him next season as he's not good enough. He's devastated that he'll no longer be able to play with his friends. He didn't play as much as the other players this season, but still loved it. Do you have any advice on what we should do next to help him? I think we're going to go deep again, aren't we, Geoff? Because I see this a lot. And again, we've just talked about it. The pressure for managers to win games of football, to keep parents happy, is incredible, and it's getting worse. And 9-year-olds, and even younger, but 9-year-old in this instance is being told by an adult, you're not good enough, I don't want you anymore, and not taking into consideration their friends, their commitment. I'm going to throw it in there, their mental health, because it should be mentioned. Just because one person's deemed that this child is not good enough, and they've already said it there, the kid's devastated. I mean, it's a complicated situation, and I get a lot of different sides of it, but I do like to come back to no child, especially of this sort of age, should ever be told that they have to stop doing something they love because they're not good at it. You should try to point out to that child why they might not be good enough yet, and then help them to get good enough. And if it's something that the child's not doing, if they're not training, if they're lazy, then I think there are some harsh life lessons, and you need to point those out to them and the parents, but do it in the right way, and explain why some children might be getting ahead and why theirs isn't. And if you want to be as good as them and be a bigger part of the team, then these are the things that you should be concentrating on and what you have to do. But to get rid of a player, probably to make room for someone that they've already penciled in, poached even from another club, just because they're not good enough, I don't like, Geoff. Or am I a romanticist?
No, I'm heartbroken you reading it out, mate. It's horrible, isn't it? But I think the advice that we would give is try and find a club whose values are the opposite of these people, and
it's difficult.
And make some new friends, and
yeah,
and
I mean, these things are easy to say and maybe obvious, aren't they? And we're going to sit here and say all the right things.
Yeah.
And maybe we should delve into, I don't know, a little bit more about why this happens and what coaches think. So there might be some coaches and managers listening to this going, it's all very well and good for you there, but I've got 1 or 2 players in my team that are holding the rest back. Why should they be held back by this kid who doesn't care? And I don't know this kid, by the way, but I'm just saying this might be just trying to get into the heads of flipping it the other way. And I've heard it. They'll say, well, why should the other kids be held back? So that's their argument. I've heard the argument, and it might be true, that there is a level for every child to get the most out of. And that changes. So then the theory would be that the players then have to change with it. So the better ones would go and play with better players, and the ones who aren't quite at that level then go and play in a league below or something together, and they're going to get more touches of the ball, more confidence, all of that. But again, it's a very easy thing to say and sounds good on paper, but it doesn't work like that. This kid got friends in a team, 9 years old, wants to play football with his mates, being told you're not allowed to by an adult because you're not good enough. I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me.
No, it never will for me, mate. It never will.
And this could be a disgruntled parent, and actually it's been handled very well, and the club have explained everything and done it all in the right way. So you don't want to come too hard on the club.
If it's happened now and that's their stance and that's what it is, that you have to try and find a positive, and you have to try and look at it as you don't know what the next chapter might be now. You don't know if you do find a club that sets you up for life and teaches you better values, and you end up coaching for that club one day. It might not be a playing route, or it just. But I would, as quickly as I can, try and put that behind me and find the next positive. Otherwise, where do you go?
Yeah, and like I say, and I say it a lot. It's a difficult one. It's a minefield. All the cliches that I normally say, but it really, really is. It might be that this manager thinks, if this child plays, I'm going to lose my 2 best players. They might have already told them. If this, if the team doesn't improve, then we're going to go and concentrate on Saturday football now, or concentrate on Sunday, or we're going to go and play for a different team, and the manager doesn't want to lose the best players.
Yeah. Well, could this parent also start up their own team with their friends?
An alternative.
And then be exactly that, the alternative to this, and have like attracts like, doesn't it? Have like-minded people there that are there for the same reasons.
And some people will be saying, start an A and a B team. The Falcons and the Jets, or the Blacks and the Whites, or whatever it might be, which you get a lot, which, again, there's another chapter on the book in that, and A and B teams, and I'm not particularly keen on that. But I think my feelings, Geoff, is that the club and the adults who have done safeguarding qualifications, and the club has a child welfare officer, there is a duty of care from the club and those adults to make sure that kids aren't devastated and just let go. That kid's given up their time, their parents given up the time, travel, the kids played in the rain, the snow, the wind, whatever it might be, gone training, well, presume they do. But certainly this happens with kids that are committed. So they've done everything right. It's just that for whatever reason, they're not quite as advanced maybe as some of the other players. And then being told, right, hop it. See you later. And we all know that kids like that get lost to the game. But this kid might have loads of potential.
Yeah, you never know what might be their window of development. It might be next year's going to be their season where they make a drastic 50% improvement on their...
I heard Virgil van Dijk talking the other day, saying how he was a skinny little kid and suddenly had a growth spurt when he was much older, very late on, 18, 19 or something, when he finally got his growth spurt to be anywhere near where he is now, and then his game just improved massively. So it might be this kid's getting released because they're not athletic enough at this point. You never know.
But it's grassroots.
It's grassroots, yeah. I'm not justifying it. I just think that people should know both sides of it rather than us sitting here preaching. And
I'm just reading it back though, and it's grassroots, so there's no justifying it for me, Pez.
You have to say it's a 9-year-old boy who's devastated that he can't play with his friends anymore because an adult's told him he's not good enough. I get it, mate. But the advice on it, actually, we haven't really covered. I know you did a bit, but because the kid's devastated.
Yeah, well, I think you said it, find an alternative or be the alternative, possibly. I think because that's not what you're after. And long term, if that's...
No, but how do you pick up a kid that's been devastated with the game that they love? Their first harsh life lesson.
By finding them somewhere to belong. Because a club, for me, a club means you belong somewhere. Whatever that club is. If it's Tiddlywinks or cribbage or whatever you're doing. A club is somewhere, book club. You go and you feel like you're a part of it. And you have some investment into it, don't you? Whereas that doesn't feel like a club environment to me. Grassroots.
Well, the only thing this kid's done wrong, we imagine, is he's not helping an adult win a game of football. And the kids, and I know all kids want to win before people get, it's a game and everyone wants to win. I get it. But 9 years old. So, fine. Obviously, it's easy to say, but try and find somewhere where they belong. I would have another go at speaking to the manager and just saying, is there any way we can... You're well within your rights to ask why and what does your child have to do to get into the team one day. Then you're having a conversation and you're putting it back onto them. And if they say, oh, it's because they're weak on the ball or because they can't pass the ball very far, try and get some things that the kid can work on. And then you can say, well, if my kid goes away and practices and works on these things, have they still got a chance? And, you might then see the true colours of the coach. They might say, yeah, okay, well, I'll still give him 5 to 10 minutes a week, which again, I think is wrong because they should all get equal playing time. But it might be that you can come up with some sort of compromise where everyone's got the best interests of the child at heart. The child might just want to be part of it and not that bothered how much game time they get. And we've already said in the last part of the podcast, in matches, you're not getting much development opportunities anyway. You're just getting experience because you haven't got much time on the ball. So can the kids still go training? Can everyone help this poor kid to get better and get to the level? Can the coach recommend, like we said, a futsal club, somewhere like we go to help them? Maybe he's not technically good enough yet. So where can they go? What can you can't just chuck them out, Geoff.
No.
It needs to be... we worked for Southampton Football Club and we never actually did it. Which is one of the things I'm most proud of. We never released one player from our development centre. But we would go to CPDs and stuff where we would talk about how you do it properly if you're going to release a player. And you sit down with the parents and you go through their strengths and weaknesses, what they need to work on and have a conversation. So I think that's your best bet. And if you think that you're not getting the answers... and you think it might be a little bit or just want to get rid of him to get someone else in, or if it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, then maybe go and speak to the child welfare officer and flag it up. Might save some other poor kid further down the line.
And they might say, well, that coach is leaving at the end of the season anyway, so there'll be another one. You never know, do you, anyway? So
don't give up. Do all the right things.
Right, shall we go on to a new random chapter? I
don't think we're going to finish all these questions today because Pezza is waffling on.
You've got 104.
104. Let's have a quick butchers to see if we've had 104 before. No, we haven't, so we'll write that down. 104. Rustling of pages. 102, 103, 104. Oh, this could be more positive.
Good.
Or maybe not. You normally have to get a balance, don't you? Do you want to read out what it is?
Moments of Magic, chapter 104.
And the opening quote is, "The chief enemy of creativity is good sense." So let's read a couple of these paragraphs out.
Is that why I'm so creative, Pez?
Exactly that. You're bordering on genius, mate. Right. There is so much to admire about football. The passion, the skill, the commitment and the teamwork, to name a few. But it's moments of magic that we love to see the most. It's those magic moments when a player does something out of the ordinary that we applaud and get excited about the most. It could be a piece of incredible skill, a turn, a mazy dribble around 4 players, a shot from the halfway line, a perfect pass, or any moment of inventiveness, creativity, or instinct. Sadly, and it pains me to be so forthright, but the chances are that your child is actually having those potential moments of magic inadvertently coached out of them without you even knowing it. It is rare that the team culture and learning environment are conducive to developing creative players capable of those moments of magic. I'm debating whether to do one more paragraph. Yeah, go on. Most coaches want their teams to play like the professional adults they see on TV, with each player passing the ball quickly and moving into space, with the team combining well together to create chances to score. That is the outcome they have in mind, and everything they do is geared towards doing this better than everyone else so that they win games of football. This is obviously a very sweeping statement, but in my experience, it is pretty accurate. Unfortunately, to get good enough to play like adults, children have to go through the process of playing like children first. They have to get hundreds of thousands of touches of the ball to earn the right to be good enough to play with 1 or 2 touches consistently well. It's something we tend to get back to front. There are no shortcuts. By trying to force children to play like professional teams, golden opportunities for learning are gone forever. Children need to be able to explore the possibilities for themselves, express themselves, and feel no fear of trying different things. If any of the following phrases or statements are commonplace at your child's football, then it is my belief that your child is actually being coached to be average. Shall I list them, Geoff? I suppose I have. I've teed it up now, haven't I? Right. Move the ball. Don't try that there. Pass, pass, pass. Release it. Play the way you're facing. Kick it out. Get it away. Too many touches. Stop. Stand still. In training. Playing lots of 2-touch games at training. When players are only allowed in certain zones in training matches. Players only ever play in set positions. Players constantly being told what to do. Losing the ball when trying something different is frowned upon. So there's some situations and some phrases that you might hear, Jeffrey, that would make me believe that your child's actually having those moments of magic coached out of them, or the opportunities, and therefore are actually being coached to be average. And it could be a very good average, but average nonetheless. Big statement. I'll get a stick for that, I'm sure. And it's difficult because without reading however many other pages we've got left to there, it's difficult to get the full picture, the full context. We've got a takeaway quote here though. What adults tend to do with young footballers is sacrifice the future possibilities for instant success and gratification. So all about now, Jeffrey, trying to win. What can we do to win now, rather than how can we create an atmosphere and a learning environment where these players can go on to be capable of moments of magic and play like they're capable of, like everyone wants them to play like. It's one of the rare chapters that hasn't got an end quote. It's probably waiting for you to get back to me on it.
I love that first quote. I love quotes when they say all of that really succinctly and quickly. The chief enemy of creativity is good sense.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know who Pablo Picasso played for, but he must have been
some Italian.
Yeah, Roma.
Team. Roma, maybe. Yeah.
I knew you'd like that.
Don't give me the giggles. I was hoping you were going to say you really like my quote, but
I obviously love them all, and I think you have mentioned it already, but there's two different things here, and there's development and there's outcomes, and one's finite where it happens now, isn't it? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to that game, and you're trying to win it. And even the process you're trying to go through to win that game, if it's one training session that week for that team, if you're spending it all around how are we going to get the best outcome, it's not your infinite beliefs that you're trying to get to, where you're trying to help somebody reach their full potential, and that's the differences between the two. So I know you've put in there about the 1 and 2 touch games in training. If that's part of a whole diet of different things that you're doing to try and help that player be able to play 1 and 2 touch at the right times in the right places, as well as the other things that you're trying to develop.
I've actually recommended recently that a under 11 player try to play more on 1 and 2 touch off his own back,
and be able to mix your game up so that you've got
exactly that.
Lots of tools to your locker. So some of those things that were around the training, so they're playing 1 and 2 touch, players only allowed in certain zones, that might be exactly the right thing for that player's development, to recognise I'm in this zone so that my opposite winger can come into the middle and I can combine or whatever it is. But amongst a multitude of other things that you've been doing. So, I mean, the first 8 are people shouting out from the sidelines, move the ball, don't try it there, release it.
Yeah.
And those things, they are definite at no point, whether it's trying to win the next game, I don't think's really that useful, because you're more than likely to be turning possession over to the other team anyway and going, go on then, you have more possession and keep trying to score goals past us. But some things might be not anywhere near as detrimental, as long as they are part of
a well thought out development plan.
Yeah, development plan, which is long term, not short term.
I just, in general, don't like anything that restricts players, because it might be 80% of that game where they're only playing 1 and 2 touch. 1 and 2 touch might have been the right thing to do to encourage moving the ball quickly, but then that 10% of moments of magic where they needed 3 touches, or 4 touches, or to dribble,
or to be able to make the decision between the two different things.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people want to play 1 and 2 touch football, so they just keep doing 1 and 2 touch practices and 1 and 2 touch matches in training, and then you're restricting their touches, which means you're restricting their technical development, which means they're less likely to be good enough to play 1 and 2 touch football well. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, just last night I covered your session at Pezza Street Soccer, didn't I, for you? Yeah. Great group, and the topic for the past 5 weeks has been passing and receiving. So we did a session that had rondos. We didn't put any restrictions on touches for that. We then did some Dutch keep ball in honour of you being in Holland, which is a 3-team game where 2 teams keep possession against the other team. We like to do it with a goal as well, so there's end product as well as not just possession without any purpose. And we also did a passing sequence where 1 passes 2, 2 passes 3, 3 passes 4, with some movement and then coming back into the space. And at no point did we put any passing restrictions on any of that. And it would have been really easy to go, well, I want it to be higher tempo, tiki-taka. But you could genuinely see when they went back to matches, because we always start with the matches and then finish with the matches, whole part whole almost, isn't it, these sessions. You could see that their ability to pass and break lines with their passes, and they were making space just naturally from exploring for the hour before they went back to the matches. And it was really clear and obvious, you can't measure it again, can you? But the decisions they were making, the quality of play it was so good, Pez, and that was all without any constraints on how many touches you're allowed. But at times they were playing 1 and 2 touch because it was the right thing to do.
Good. Well, you can cover again next week then. I'll have the evening off. I'll just go and live with Charlie out in Holland.
You've got to take me next time you go. It sounds great.
Yeah, I did miss you.
Liar.
Yeah, like I said, I did recently tell a player to because he's been criticised from his manager, I believe, for keeping hold of the ball too long. And actually, you might think, okay, well, maybe they are. And actually, the ones that are capable of doing stuff do tend to keep hold of the ball a bit longer because they know they're capable of it, and they're looking for trying to force maybe those affordances for action when they're not there. And my advice was just, like you said, mix up your game. So play 1 and 2 touch for periods of a game. And if you're moving the ball away quickly, opponents are going to give you more space because they can't get near you because you keep moving the ball away quickly. And then that gives you more space to then maybe be a bit more creative or to take the ball forward a little bit more. And then you're not totally restricting. I think it's always good to mix up your game anyway. Even goalkeepers that always play it short. Like Edison for City will zing one 40-50 yards every now and again, very accurately, by the way, because it just gets people thinking, what are they going to do next? So in all aspects of the game, I think you should mix it up. But anyway, we're still on Moments of Magic. We are, aren't we? So that was that. Don't know why we picked out the 1 and 2 touch, really, because it was one of the phrases, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was the next question we've got here?
It's my turn to read one, isn't it?
Yeah. Go on.
Shall we make?
Yeah, we make this the last one because
this the podcast.
We're at an hour. We can.
What are your views on game time for young players from under 7s to under 11s? In our team, all the parents pay the same fee, but not all players get the same playing time.
Interesting, because I'd never really thought about that angle before.
What, they pay the same, so they should get the same.
And I think when you're involved in the game and you know that not everything's even and stuff, that someone who might not be that involved in the game might go, well, hang on, I'm paying the same as them. They should get the same playing time. And you think, well, perhaps they got a point. Or have they? I don't know, Geoff.
They have a point, but it's also, it's not really a business transaction either, is it? I believe that players at that age should get equal playing time. Unless you're making a point about somebody's character, where I know you used to do this a little bit, Pez, where if somebody put their hand up to play at the back because they were, and it wouldn't mean they have to stay at the back in your teams, I know, but if they were taking a little bit of responsibility and being unselfish for the team, you'd give them maybe one less rotations in subs when those subs come around, as a reward for them showing good
taking one for the team, basically,
team character.
Yeah.
So it might be that there's a genuine reason like that. There's the kids all know about that you don't. I don't know the context of this question, but kids should generally get treated equally in playing time, but not because you're paying the same money, but because, again, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. It just gets confusing, and this was something else that you've taught me, Pez, when two people believe they're right and they both are right, but they've got conflicting views, and then it might be that the coach has chosen somebody to play more for one of those reasons, but you think you're right that the kids should all have the same playing time. So it's maybe just having a conversation around it and seeing why. And
all these situations sort of judged on their own merit, I guess, aren't they? And in their own context. And again, it's easy for us to say, yes, under 7s, under 11s, everyone should have equal playing time and should be rotated around all the positions.
You're never going to get exactly equal playing time to somebody's stopwatch. So,
if you try to do it exactly equal,
when you've got so many times,
two or three impact players, as we like to call them, it's a nightmare, and you get really caught up in it.
I actually think it's harder for a futsal coach, and I'll tell you why. Because the clock should be stop clock in an adult's game, but you never have that opportunity. Very rarely in youth futsal. So it'll be a running clock, but you might have 9 players for a 5-a-side game, and so you might be swapping them every 3 or 4 minutes. But you don't want to be making subs because the referee doesn't stop the game for subs in futsal. You just do it. you can do it while the ball's in play as long as
Mhm.
one player comes off and one goes on. So if the other team have a goal clearance or a free kick or a kick in, you don't want to be calling a player off because 4 minutes is up, you get on now.
Yeah.
But the ball might stay in play for another minute, or it might be you're defending a corner and set pieces for 2 or 3 minutes relentlessly. So you've got a kid that might be sat there, they've done their 4 minutes, you've said all 4 swap or given a few names out, and you need to come off now for equal playing time. And then if you're only playing 12-minute games in a tournament somewhere, suddenly 8 minutes have gone and you haven't made a sub because the ball's not gone out of play at the right time for you to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to concede a goal, and it's
And that's just the basics. And then there's you might not want certain players who've got similar attributes being on at the same time. You want to get some balance in the team. And yet, I used to do it all the time with that. I used to think I'd mapped it out perfectly in my head, and then you'd be like, oh no, that lot can't play together. They're too similar, and how do I mess up? But they have to, because it has to be fair.
At the start, I did used to
there is some sympathy for coaches here.
I did try and do spreadsheets, so I'd have, right, if I've got 9 players, it's really easy. I've got 4 on, 4 off. And then if I've got 8, bit like you, maybe have one stay as the back man, the fix, and they get to stay on whilst the 3 in front of them rotate until they get too tired, and then I'll put another player in there. And then I used to go, right, well, if I've got 7, then I'll have 2 subs, so that'll be dead easy because it's 2 on, 2 off. And I used to, but now I just try and use my experience.
I think with those plans is someone would drop out just before, or somebody who wasn't available would suddenly message and go, oh, Tiny Tim's available now, and he'd be like, oh, that's great, and he'd be like, oh no, but I've planned everything.
Gone from my favourite coaching number to my least favourite coaching number in one foul
and
text message.
You're under pressure during the match, and you're trying to think who was on last and who's this. That's why I always used to have an assistant. And just used to have to go, who did we bring off last, and ask those questions. So it is a bit of a nightmare for parents. I agree with it's not a business. The only time I agree with it, like we're taking a team to play at Stamford Bridge, which is a lot of money, and everyone's paid equal money, and I will go there with the plan that everyone gets equal playing time, no matter whether we're unbalanced, what the situation is, and just go for it and see where we end up.
As a coach, you can really justify that because that is the reason. There's no arguing with that. You can say that is exactly what it is.
But you'll always get, we would have won if the strongest 6 or 7 had been out there all the time, and
or if you didn't play so and so out of position because he's never played there.
My lot don't have position, so it's a bit of a nightmare for me as well. We're just going to go there and throw them all out, and even at their age, and say, can a couple of you protect the goal? Go from there, and hope that their technical ability will see them through a little bit. So
in short, it should be equal playing time, but if you can justify to your players and the parents some special scenario, because what if you've got someone who just loves playing in goal? Are you going to keep swapping your goalkeeper around if that's their specialist position?
I think
maybe you should, I don't know, but as long as it can be justified and everyone understands and you're all on the same page and there's no grey areas, because as soon as there's grey areas, that's when conflicts start happening.
Do you think each team within a club should have their own ethos, or should there be a club ethos that says from under 7s to under 11s we not demand obviously, but we encourage all our age groups to have equal playing time? Because then that might be the selling point of your club. I'm going to take my son or daughter there because that sounds really fair place to go. And then would that take pressure off some of the managers that go, well, it's a club thing, or then will they just lose their players that want to go somewhere where it's their best players every week in their best positions and they're going to win some tin pots? I mean, I've been a manager and I've wanted to win and I've got caught up in it, and it is difficult. And you look to the bench sometimes and go, oh no. Cup final. I remember once a lad, it wasn't his fault. He was a bit smaller than the rest. We were playing a year up, so he was almost 2 years younger than some of the people on the pitch, which is massive. And through no fault of their own, they weren't able to train for quite a period leading up to it, or was very sporadic. So he didn't, not for his own fault, but didn't deserve a starting place or as much playing time as the others. But it got to the point where it was like, well, to be fair and to practice what I preach, this kid's coming on for extra time in a cup final at 2-2. Thinking, oh no. But I did it. But I've been there and I've had all the things cross my mind saying, wow, I could always smooth it out afterwards. Just all the way the game was going, and it was too tight for me to make any changes and all that. And you have to park all that. And I'm glad we did. And we went on to win on penalties, so it all turned out right. But you just know, Geoff, if I'd have brought this player on and it hadn't turned out, I might have lost players for the following season. Because some parents get that angry. You know, what were you doing? We could have won that game and everyone had worked so hard.
But
doesn't even train.
Who does it benefit in the long run again, doesn't it? That comes back to that. And are you just looking at the infinite, that game there and then, or are you going to look at the long-term future? And
well, there's a couple of sides of it, you know. For one, there's a life lesson with that child and his parents. You don't train, you don't play.
Yeah.
Life's not always fair. Get used to it. You can almost find some sort of quote or cliche to suit any narrative here, can't you?
Yeah, but also if you lose that game and you've done the right thing, there's life lessons for the whole squad in there somewhere. That
yeah, I mean, I always quite liked it when the team, in theory, was weakened, because certain players had to step up to the plate and work harder, or find ways of adapting to it. You can even talk about it, you know, if we find ourselves in this situation, you know, scenario, how can we get through that situation? What can we do? You want your characters to step up. So yeah, there's life lessons in all of it. That's why being a youth football manager, Geoff, is really bloody important. There's so much more to it.
Hardest game in the world. Hardest game in the world.
You know, there's just, when you're responsible for these kids' welfare, their mental health, their development, their happiness, you know, their playing time, so much, and you're still trying to win a game, which is the object of the game. Big responsibility to get the balance right between everything, and you're never going to please everyone, which I think was my point. Would it be easier if a club had an ethos that you can kind of stick to, like a blueprint or guidelines? Just you can say, well, this is what the club is, this is why we do it. That's it. I don't know. So I'm asking you. A get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the chairman or chairwoman says. Chairperson, I don't know what you refer to him now. Just the chair.
I actually just was reading the question back, and I first off I thought it was a parent asking it, but it could be a coach, it could be a chairperson asking for their club.
Could be a child welfare officer. Could be anybody, yeah.
If it's under 7s to under 11s, it might be a whole club thing that they're looking into. Yeah. So it might be about making that decision across the board to take the pressure off the coaches, which I think that is a good thing if the coaches can pass you on to somebody else and say, this is come from the top almost, isn't it? So
yeah, this is our beliefs as a club, our ethos. And if you have got that, then presumably you're wanting to appoint managers that fit in with that ethos, although normally it's someone's dad who doesn't want to do it. But
ideally you shouldn't really be joining a team that you don't know their ethos and values and culture and what it's likely to be.
Well, every team's supposed to have codes of conduct and things like that, aren't they?
Yeah.
So maybe they need to get them out there a bit more and educate. I don't know. But I think, Geoff, 3 amazing questions there. But we've managed to waffle on about, but hopefully I tried to be a bit more devil's advocate this week rather than just saying exactly what I feel, which I obviously still did. But I understand it's not always that easy, and there are many different sides to it. And as I've just pointed out, there's a big responsibility there. And there's even a responsibility to the parents who do put in their time to travel and make sacrifices and give up weekends away and family time, and they've planned holidays around it, and unfortunately all they want to do is see their kid play every minute and win every game. So there's a conflict of interests all the time and all over the place. But good communication, good ethics, and communicating those ethics, I think, really helps and goes a long way to it being as smooth an operation as possible, Geoff.
Well done.
Yeah. Well, that's tired me out, Jeffrey.
It always does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I really do care about it and try and add as much value to it as possible. And, you know, I'm like, I'll come away from it going, oh, I wish I'd said this and wish I'd said that and didn't think of this. But I try. And we've tried for an hour and 15 minutes now, so I think we should probably wrap it up. But if you've enjoyed it, and even if you haven't, and even if you're shouting at us as a coach, going, yeah, it's all right for you two idiots in there bleating on about what we should and shouldn't do, but maybe.
Well, you have been a chairman of a club that had how many teams?
Yeah, I've been a chairman, yeah.
All the way from youth up to adults, and
I know that it's difficult.
So have I now. So
I'm a child welfare officer now for Wessex Futsal Club. Yeah. You know, there's not many roles, and I've been involved with the first team in the Premier League and the Championship.
So
right down to under sixes, which I have run a team of under sixes. You know, that we did little tournaments with, building up for their first season at under seven. So I've done a lot. I don't always get it right, and I don't always say the right things, but I try. And I try and give some sort of balance. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about, funny enough, I chatting with Charlie's dad about this over the weekend, over a little Belgian beer. It's about communicating that there are possibilities and even probabilities, and awareness. So letting parents and coaches aware that if you do this, that could happen. If you don't do this, that might happen, and this could happen, etc. And so once people are aware, they can then make a better judgment for themselves, and they might go, listen to you, I still think you're an idiot, but thanks for that. I'm a bit more aware of that possibility. And with the book, it's all about making people aware of different possibilities, but possibilities turn into probabilities the more things that they are doing that are in the book badly, if that makes sense. So if you've got a kid who's playing for two teams, you give them a pep talk in the car before and after games, you're paying them £5 a goal. If the team wins, you're taking him and his best mate for a McDonald's on the way home. If you're marking them out of 10, if you're keeping notes of games, of how many goals they've scored, whether they got player of the match, how many minutes they got, all these little things, when you add them all up, turn from possibilities to probabilities, and the probability is you're stifling your child's character, your child's development in the game, their progress as a player, putting a ceiling on where they might end up playing, so on and so forth.
And actually think you're doing good along the way whilst doing those things.
So the idea with the book is a parent might look at those things and go, oh, I never even thought of that. Tell you what, I'm going to stop doing that one, but we really like talking about the game afterwards and going for it. Cool, carry on doing it. You know, it might be, oh, he really likes to know how many goals he scored. Okay, we'll keep doing that, but don't give him a £5 for every one. Don't take him to McDonald's only when they've won. Take them to McDonald's when they've lost sometimes, you know. And it's all in there of the pros and cons of all these things. I've gone right off on one there, haven't I, Geoff? Just as I was wrapping it up, I got heavily involved.
Come on then, let's sign out.
Let's sign out. And I was only saying, if you've enjoyed it or you haven't, please please just like or share it or leave a review. A nice 5-star review would be great. We'll even give you a shout out if you do. So yeah, subscribe. It really does help get us out there to more people, because it gets picked up on the algorithms the more loving that it's had. And this episode is sponsored by my book. Did you win? Did you score? How to help your child succeed at football and life. And please never forget, football isn't that important, but children are. And we'll see you next time.